Money screams, but wealth whispers, and on this freezing Tuesday at Teterboro Airport, Samuel Worley was screaming at the top of his lungs. He saw a black woman in a hoodie sitting in the VIP lounge and assumed she was cleaning staff. He mocked her, snapped his fingers at her, and tried to kick her off the tarmac. He thought he was the king of the world because he chartered a seat on a private jet. He didn't realize the woman he was abusing didn't just buy a ticket. She bought the plane, and by the time they hit 30,000 feet, his career would be over. The air inside the signature flight support terminal at Teterboro Airport smelled of espresso and aggressive cologne. It was the specific scent of money, new, impatient money. Outside, the New Jersey winter whipped against the floor-to-ceiling glass, but inside, the climate was controlled to a perfect 72 degrees. Samuel C. Worley adjusted the lapels of his bespoke Italian suit, ensuring his Rolex Submariner slid out just enough to be visible to anyone glancing his way. He was pacing the lounge, barking into his iPhone, his voice echoing off the marble floors. "I told you, dumping the stock is a mistake, Jerry. I don't care about the regulatory hearing. I'm flying out to Aspen right now to close the merger. By Monday we'll be liquid. Just hold the line." Samuel ended the call and looked around the lounge with a sneer. He was 42, fit in a Peloton sort of way, with teeth whitened to an unnatural shade of porcelain. This was his moment. After years of grinding in mid-tier equity firms, he had finally secured a seat on a private charter, a Gulfstream G6R50ER, headed to Colorado for the biggest tech summit of the year. He wasn't just a passenger. In his mind, he was the main character. He walked over to the complimentary refreshment bar, pouring himself a sparkling water. That's when he saw her. Sitting in a corner armchair, away from the few other businessmen in the room, was a black woman. She looked to be in her early 50s. She wore a slate-grey, oversized hoodie, black leggings, and sneakers that looked well worn. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and she was engrossed in a paperback book, sipping tea from a paper cup. Samuel frowned. He looked at the exclusive entry door, then back at her. Teterboro's VIP lounges were usually reserved for the elite, people paying $50,000 for a flight, or celebrities. She looked like she was waiting for a bus. He walked over, his leather loafers clicking sharply. He stood directly in front of her, casting a shadow over her book. She didn't look up. "Excuse me," Samuel said, his voice dripping with condescension. The woman turned a page. "Mm-hmm. The staff break room is down the hall, near the hangars," Samuel said, pointing a manicured finger toward the exit. "This area is for ticketed passengers only, specifically priority private clients." The woman finally looked up. Her eyes were dark, calm, and completely unimpressed. She adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm comfortable right here, thank you." Samuel let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. He looked around, hoping to find an audience for his indignation. "Look, I don't know who let you in here to wait for your shift to start, but I'm on a very important call, and I need this corner for privacy. I suggest you take your tea and go find a mop closet or wherever you people usually wait." The woman closed her book slowly. She placed it on her lap. "You people?" she asked, her voice soft but possessing a peculiar weight. "Support staff," Samuel said, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. "Cleaners, caterers, whatever. Look, I'm flying on the G650 in 20 minutes. I don't need the distraction of loiterers. Security is tight here." "It is," she agreed, "which is why I'm surprised you're shouting." "I'm not shouting." Samuel's voice rose an octave. "I'm a Platinum Charter member. Do you know how much I paid for this seat? I paid $12,000 for a shared leg to Aspen. 12,000. "That is a lot of money," she said, picking up her tea again. It's more money than you'll make in 6 months, Samuel snapped. Now move. I need to charge my iPad, and that outlet is the only one close to the window. The woman looked at the outlet, then at him. She didn't move. She simply opened her book again. There is an outlet behind you, sir, and plenty of empty chairs. Samuel's face turned a shade of crimson. He wasn't used to being told no. Certainly not by someone dressed like they were going to a grocery store. He leaned down, invading her personal space. Listen to me, he hissed. I'm going to find the concierge, and I'm going to have you escorted out, and I'll make sure your supervisor knows that you were harassing VIP guests. You want to lose your job over a seat? Keep sitting there. The woman offered a faint, almost sad smile. Go ahead. Find the concierge. Samuel huffed, spinning on his heel. He marched to the front desk, where a young woman named Sarah was typing furiously. You! Samuel barked. There is a vagrant in the lounge, a woman in a hoodie. She's refusing to move, and she's being aggressive. I want her removed. Now. Sarah looked up, confused. She craned her neck to look past Samuel's shoulder. When she saw the woman in the grey hoodie, Sarah's face went pale. She stood up immediately, smoothing her uniform. Sir, Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. That is, we cannot remove her. What do you mean you can't? Samuel slammed his hand on the counter. I'm the customer. I'm the one paying for the fuel. If you don't get rid of the riffraff, I'm going to write a review that will tank this FBO. Sir, please lower your voice, Sarah pleaded, looking terrified. Not of Samuel, but of the woman hearing him. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Samuel interrupted. Diversity hire program, right? Can't touch them? Fine. I'll handle it myself. Samuel stormed back towards the seating area, but before he could launch another tirade, the heavy glass doors to the tarmac slid open. A pilot in a pristine uniform walked in, holding a manifest. Boarding for Flight 772 to Aspen, the pilot announced. Samuel smirked at the woman. Showtime. Guess you'll have to clean up my trash after I'm gone. He grabbed his Louis Vuitton duffel bag and shoved past her chair, deliberately bumping her shoulder with the bag. The woman didn't flinch. She simply stood up, tucked her book under her arm, and followed him toward the door. The wind on the tarmac was biting, cutting through Samuel's suit instantly. He shivered, regretting leaving his overcoat in the car to look tougher. Ahead of them sat the bird, a magnificent Gulfstream G650ER, sleek, silver, and looking like a missile designed for luxury. Samuel felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the big leagues. He walked briskly toward the stairs, eager to get out of the cold and into the champagne service. He heard sneakers scuffing on the pavement behind him. He stopped and turned around. The woman in the hoodie was following him out to the plane. Samuel stopped dead in his tracks, blocking the path to the stairs. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Samuel shouted over the whine of the auxiliary power unit. Where do you think you're going? The woman stopped a few feet away, her hands in her hoodie pockets. To the plane. The hell you are! Samuel laughed, looking at the ground crew who were loading luggage. Hey guys, you got a stowaway here. She's trying to sneak on. A ramp agent looked up, saw the woman, and immediately looked down, continuing his work with his head lowered. Samuel took this as incompetence. Are you deaf? Samuel screamed at the crew. Then he turned back to the woman. Lady, this isn't a commercial flight. You don't just stand by for a seat. This is a private charter. You need a ticket. You need clearance. You need to not look like you slept in a dumpster. The woman took a step forward. I have clearance. Bull! Samuel spat. Let me see your boarding pass. Let me see your invite. I don't have a boarding pass, she said calmly. Exactly. Samuel threw his hands up triumphantly. You're delusional. You're probably one of the cleaners meant to scrub the lavatory before we take off. Well, you're late. We're boarding. Go back inside." He stood on the first step of the air stairs, physically blocking her ascent. He looked down at her, feeling tall, powerful, and superior. "Move," she said. The command was quiet, but it had an edge of steel that hadn't been there before. "Make me," Samuel sneered. "I know your type. You think the world owes you something. You see a rich guy and think you can just tag along. I worked for this. I grinded for 20 years to stand on these steps. You? You're just in the way." Suddenly, the captain, the same one who had announced boarding, appeared at the top of the stairs. He was a tall man with silver hair and 4 stripes on his shoulders. Captain Merrick. "Is there a problem down there?" Captain Merrick called out, his voice booming. Samuel looked up, flashing a winning smile. "Just handling a security issue for you, Captain. This woman is trying to harass me and force her way onto the flight. I'm keeping her off so we can depart on time. You might want to call the police." Captain Merrick looked down. He looked at Samuel. Then he looked at the woman in the hoodie. His expression tightened. "Ma'am?" the captain said, his tone shifting to one of extreme deference. "Is everything all right?" Samuel laughed. "Don't call her Ma'am, Cap. She's nobody. Just tell her to get lost." The woman looked up at the captain. "We're having a slight delay, Captain Merrick. This gentleman seems to think he's running security today." Samuel rolled his eyes. "I'm running common sense, lady." He looked at his watch. "Captain, seriously, it's freezing. Can we get the police to remove her? I have a merger to close." The captain hesitated. He opened his mouth to speak, but the woman caught his eye and gave a nearly imperceptible shake of her head. She was giving a silent order. "Wait. Let him dig." Captain Merrick closed his mouth. He took a deep breath. "Sir, please board the aircraft. We need to keep to the schedule." Samuel smirked at the woman. "You heard the man. He wants the paying passengers on board, not the trash." He turned and trotted up the stairs, brushing past the captain. "Good man, Captain. I'll make sure to tip you well when we land. Keep the riffraff off, yeah?" Samuel ducked his head and entered the cabin. He didn't see the look the captain gave the woman. He didn't see the captain step aside, bow his head slightly, and gesture for the woman to follow. And he certainly didn't see the woman's eyes harden as she gripped the railing and began to climb the stairs behind him. The interior of the Gulf Stream was breathtaking. Cream leather seats, mahogany trim, and soft LED lighting that made everything look like a movie set. There were only 8 seats in this configuration, ensuring maximum comfort. Samuel threw his duffel bag onto one of the side divans, not waiting for the flight attendant to take it. He scanned the cabin and zeroed in on the master seat, the forward-facing captain's chair on the right side, usually reserved for the owner or the VIP. It had the best view and the largest table. "This is me," Samuel muttered, throwing his jacket over the back of the chair and settling in. He stretched his legs out, blocking the aisle. A flight attendant, a poised woman named Eleanor, stepped forward with a tray of hot towels. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Worley. Can I get you a drink before takeoff?" "Scotch," Samuel said, not looking at her. "Blue Label if you have it. If not, whatever the most expensive thing back there is. And make it a double." "Certainly." Samuel pulled out his phone to take a selfie. He framed the shot to show the leather seat and the window. He was about to snap the picture when he heard footsteps entering the cabin. He lowered the phone. The woman in the hoodie was walking down the aisle. Samuel dropped his phone into his lap. "You have got to be kidding me." He unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, looming over the aisle. "Hey, did you not hear me outside? The captain told you to beat it." The woman ignored him. She walked past him, her shoulder brushing his suit jacket. She headed toward the rear of the plane, where a private conference area was located. "I am talking to you," Samuel shouted. The acoustics of the plane made his voice sound incredibly loud and crass. Elena, the flight attendant, rushed over. "Mr. Worley, please sit down. We are preparing for taxi." "Why is she here?" Samuel pointed a shaking finger at the woman, who was now settling into a seat in the back, opening her book again. "I paid for a private charter experience. I didn't pay to fly with a homeless person who slipped past security." "Sir," Elena said, her voice tight, "she is on the manifest." "Manifest?" Samuel scoffed. "What, is she a charity case? Did the charter company donate a seat to the underprivileged? This is unbelievable." He turned around and glared at the woman. "Hey, Charity, you enjoy the ride, okay? Try not to steal the silverware." The woman looked up over her glasses. "Mr. Worley, was it?" "That's right, Samuel Worley. Remember the name, because I'm going to be the one filing the complaint about you. Mr. Worley," she continued, her voice even, "I suggest you sit down and drink your scotch. You are disturbing the peace." "I'm disturbing the peace?" Samuel laughed, looking at Elena for support. "This is rich. Okay, fine. If the airline wants to play social justice warrior and let you fly, fine. But don't you dare come into the front cabin. You stay back there. Do not talk to me. Do not look at me." He sat back down hard in the master seat. "Unbelievable," he muttered loudly. "Ruins the whole aesthetic." Eleanor handed him his scotch. Her hands were shaking slightly. She leaned in close. "Mr. Worley, I would strongly advise you to be respectful to the other passenger." Samuel took the glass and downed half of it in one gulp. "Respect is earned, sweetheart. And she hasn't earned a dime in her life, judging by those shoes." The engine spooled up, a high-pitched whine that vibrated through the floor. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Good afternoon, folks. This is Captain Merrick. We're cleared for taxi. Flight time to Aspen is 3 hours and 40 minutes. We're expecting a smooth ride, but please keep your seatbelts fastened. We'll be in the air shortly." Samuel buckled his belt, feeling the thrust of the engines push him back into the soft leather. He closed his eyes, visualizing the deal he was going to close. He imagined the bonus check. He didn't notice that the flight attendant, Elena, was walking to the back of the plane. Not to the galley, but to the woman in the hoodie. He didn't see Elena crouch down next to the woman, whispering urgently. He didn't see the woman nod slowly and hand Elena a small black card from her pocket. The plane rocketed down the runway and lifted into the grey New Jersey sky. Samuel looked out the window, watching the world get smaller beneath him. He felt like a god. He had no idea that the plane wasn't going to Aspen anymore. At 41,000 feet, the sky was a deep, bruising purple. The Gulf Stream G650ER was cruising at Mach 090, slicing through the atmosphere with a silence that money alone could buy. Inside the cabin, however, the noise level was entirely determined by Samuel Worley. He had finished his second blue label and was now on his third. The alcohol had stripped away the thin veneer of corporate professionalism, leaving behind only the raw, unfiltered entitlement of a man who believed the world existed to serve him. "Elena!" Samuel barked, rattling the empty crystal glass against the polished mahogany side table. "We're 40 minutes in. Where is the catering? I ordered the sea bass. And tell the pilot to smooth it out. I felt a bump back there." Elena appeared from the galley. She looked stressed. Her usually perfect bun was slightly askew, and there was a tightness around her eyes. "Mr. Worley, dinner will be served shortly. However, we are currently prioritizing a service request for the other passenger." Samuel froze. He slowly lowered his glass. "Excuse me?" "The other passenger requested tea and the light lunch menu," Elena said, her voice steady but cautious. I am preparing her tray now." Samuel stood up, his face flushing a deep, dangerous red. "You are prioritizing her. Over me. I'm the primary charter. I'm the one paying the invoice. She's a stowaway charity case." "She is a guest on this aircraft, sir," Elena replied. "She's a distraction," Samuel shouted. He pushed past Elena, marching down the aisle toward the rear cabin. The woman in the hoodie was no longer reading her paperback. She had a laptop open on the folding table in front of her. It wasn't a consumer laptop. It was a rugged, high-security machine. She was typing rapidly, her eyes scanning lines of data that Samuel couldn't make out from a distance. He stopped at her row, looming over her. Hey, I'm talking to you." The woman didn't stop typing. "Mr. Worley, I thought we agreed you would stay in your section." "I don't agree to anything when the service I paid for is being diverted to a vagrant," Samuel sneered. He leaned down, placing a hand on her table, dangerously close to her laptop. "Who are you? Huh? Who do you know at the charter company? Did you sleep with the dispatcher? Is that how you got this seat?" The woman stopped typing. She slowly removed her glasses and placed them on the table. She looked up at him, and for the first time, Samuel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Her eyes were terrifyingly intelligent. "Remove your hand from my table," she said softly. "Or what?" Samuel challenged. "You'll call the manager." "I am the manager, sweetheart. I'm a managing director at Apex Capital. I buy and sell companies like you, buy whatever cheap tea this is." He grabbed the paper cup of tea she had been drinking and crushed it in his hand, letting the lukewarm liquid splash onto the table and a few drops onto her grey hoodie. The cabin went silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed to drop away. The woman looked at the spilled tea. Then she looked at the stain on her hoodie. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply reached for a napkin and dabbed at the mess. "You have made a very significant mistake, Samuel," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was factual, like a doctor diagnosing a terminal illness. "The mistake was letting you on this plane," Samuel retorted. He wiped his wet hand on her headrest. "Elena, clean this up, and bring my sea bass. If I have to wait another 5 minutes, I'm docking your tip." He turned and swaggered back to the front of the plane, feeling a rush of dominance. He had put her in her place. He sat down in the master seat, opened his iPad, and connected to the plane's Ka-band Wi-Fi. He pulled up the flight tracker app, wanting to see how close they were to Colorado. He loved watching the little airplane icon move across the map. He frowned. The icon wasn't pointing west toward Aspen. It was banking hard. Specifically, it was banking northeast. "What the?" Samuel tapped the screen. "Broken piece of junk technology." He looked out the window. The sun was shifting position. They were definitely turning. He hit the flight attendant call button repeatedly. Ding! 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 Elena appeared, looking paler than before. "Why are we turning?" Samuel demanded. "I'm looking at the tracker. We're heading toward, looks like Chicago or Detroit. Why aren't we going to Aspen?" "Captain Merrick has determined a diversion is necessary," Elena said stiffly. Samuel laughed, clapping his hands. "Aha! I knew it. It's her, isn't it? The stowaway. She caused a security issue? Or did the airline finally realize she doesn't belong here?" "There is a security concern regarding a passenger," Elena said carefully. "The captain has decided to land at the nearest suitable airport to resolve the situation." "Yes!" Samuel punched the air. "Justice! Finally! Oh, this is rich. I hope the cops are waiting. I want to see her dragged off in handcuffs. I'm going to video record it." He leaned back, completely satisfied. "You know what, Elena? Forget the sea bass. Bring me the champagne. We're celebrating. It's not every day the trash gets taken out at 40,000 feet. Elena looked at him with an expression that was a mix of pity and disbelief. "I will bring the champagne, sir, but I suggest you prepare your belongings. The landing will be soon." "Oh, I'm not going anywhere." Samuel grinned. "We're going to drop her off, refuel, and then I am going to Aspen. That's how this works." In the back of the plane, the woman in the grey hoodie had closed her laptop. She picked up the cabin phone handset. She dialed a single digit. "Captain?" she said into the receiver. "Status?" Captain Merrick's voice came through, clear and respectful. "We are 20 minutes out from O'Hare, ma'am. Law enforcement is on standby at the private hangars. Ground team is ready." "Good," she said. "Make sure they know who the aggressor is. I don't want any confusion on the tarmac." "Understood. And ma'am, I apologize for his behavior. I wanted to intervene sooner." "No, Captain. You did exactly as I instructed. Sometimes you have to let a man hang himself to make sure the knot holds tight." She hung up the phone. She looked down at the tea stain on her hoodie. She brushed it with her thumb. Samuel Worley thought he was flying to a merger. He had no idea he was flying directly into a courtroom. The descent into Chicago O'Hare was aggressive. The Gulf Stream dropped altitude quickly, the spoilers on the wings deploying to cut speed. Samuel was in high spirits. The champagne had gone to his head, and the vindication had gone to his ego. He stood up, ignoring the fasten seatbelt sign, and walked to the partition separating the cabins. "Hey, stowaway!" he shouted over the partition. "Look out the window. That's Chicago. Enjoy the layover. I hear the bus station is lovely this time of year." He laughed at his own joke and sat back down as the landing gear deployed with a heavy thud clunk. As the wheels touched down, Samuel watched the runway race by. The plane taxied quickly, not toward the main terminals, but toward a secluded area of the airfield reserved for high-security private arrivals. Samuel pressed his face against the window. Oh, look at that. Flashing lights. Blue and red. Indeed, 3 SUVs with flashing light bars were waiting on the tarmac. 2 were marked Chicago Police, and 1 was an unmarked black SUV. "They brought the welcoming committee for you, honey," Samuel yelled toward the back. The plane came to a halt. The engines whined down. The fastened seatbelt sign pinged off. Samuel jumped up. He grabbed his jacket. "Elena, open the door. I want to point her out to the officers." "Please remain in your seat, Mr. Worley," Elena said sharply. This time she wasn't acting like a servant. She was acting like a crew member in charge of safety. "Relax, I'm helping," Samuel said. The main cabin door hissed and folded open, the stairs deploying automatically. A blast of freezing Chicago air rushed into the cabin. Almost immediately, 2 uniformed police officers and a man in a dark suit ascended the stairs. They stepped into the cabin, their expressions grim. Samuel stepped forward, extending a hand to the lead officer. "Officers, thank God you're here. I'm Samuel Worley. I'm the one who chartered this flight. The problem is in the back. A woman. She's been aggressive, refusing to identify herself, and frankly, she's trespassing." The lead officer, a burly man with a thick mustache, ignored Samuel's hand. He looked past Samuel. "Captain Merrick," the officer called out. The captain stepped out of the cockpit. "Here, officer. We received a call regarding a Level 3 interference with a flight crew and assault on a passenger," the officer said. "That's right," Samuel interrupted. "She assaulted me. She threatened me. And she spilled tea everywhere. It was a menace." The officer looked at Samuel. "Sir, step aside." "I'm telling you where she is." Samuel pointed. From the back of the plane, the woman in the grey hoodie stood up. She picked up her bag. She walked slowly up the aisle. Samuel smirked. "Here she comes. The walk of shame. Officer, Arrest her." The woman walked right up to Samuel. She stopped. Then she walked past him. She stopped in front of the man in the dark suit, the one who had boarded with the police. "Ms. Clark," the man in the suit said, bowing his head respectfully. "I'm sorry for the interruption to your schedule. The car is waiting." Samuel blinked. "Ms. Clark?" The woman nodded to the man. Then she turned to the police officer. "Officer, I want to press charges immediately." "Of course, Ms. Clark," the officer said. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. Samuel laughed nervously. Wait. Ms. Clark? Who is Miss Clark? And why are you talking to her? She's the intruder." The woman finally turned to look at Samuel. She stood tall, her posture commanding the entire space. The homeless vibe was gone. In its place was the radiating power of a titan. "My name," she said, her voice crisp and clear, "is Vivian Clark. I am the CEO of Clark Aviation Group." Samuel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His brain was trying to process the information. Clark Aviation Group, the company that operated this charter. "I also," she continued, taking a step toward him, "own the venture capital firm, Titanium Holdings." Samuel's knees went weak. Titanium Holdings. They were the majority shareholder of the bank financing his merger in Aspen. They effectively owned his career. "And," she finished, gesturing to the cream leather walls around them, "I own this airplane. Personally. This isn't a fleet plane, Mr. Worley. This is my private jet. I was flying it to Chicago for maintenance when my scheduler told me we had a desperate client willing to pay a premium for a ride to Aspen. I told them to let you tag along because I was heading that way, and I believe in efficiency." The silence in the cabin was deafening. Samuel looked at the captain. The captain nodded solemnly. He looked at Eleanor. Eleanor was smiling, a cold, satisfied smile. You own the jet?" Samuel whispered. "I do," Vivian said. "And I do not tolerate abuse of my staff. I do not tolerate racism. And I certainly do not tolerate men who think a $12,000 ticket gives them the right to treat human beings like garbage." She turned to the police officer. "He assaulted me by throwing hot tea on me. There are witnesses and stains to prove it. He interfered with the flight crew by disobeying direct orders from the captain, and he has been verbally abusive for the duration of the flight." The officer turned to Samuel. The handcuffs clicked open. "Samuel Worley," the officer said, grabbing Samuel's wrist. "You are under arrest." "No!" Samuel shrieked, pulling back. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am? I have a meeting in Aspen. I'm closing a merger. If I miss this meeting, I lose everything." Vivian Clark checked her watch. "You already lost everything, Samuel. I just sent an email to the board of directors at Apex Capital and to the partners at the firm you were meeting in Aspen. I informed them that Titanium Holdings is pulling all financing for the merger due to the unethical and volatile conduct of the lead negotiator." Samuel's face went white. You tanked the deal?" "You tanked the deal," Vivian corrected. "I just signed the death certificate." "Get him off my plane," she ordered the police. "This is illegal," Samuel screamed as the officers spun him around and cuffed his hands behind his back. "I paid for this seat. I have a contract." "Read the fine print, Mr. Worley," Vivian called out as they dragged him toward the door. Clause 14, Section B. The owner reserves the right to terminate transport at any time for conduct deemed detrimental to the safety or comfort of the crew. Samuel was hauled down the stairs, kicking and screaming into the biting Chicago wind. He looked back up at the door, hoping for mercy. Vivian Clark stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at him, just as he had looked down at her on the tarmac in New Jersey. "Officer!" Vivian shouted down. "Make sure you get his mug shot. I want to frame it for the lounge." You be—" Samuel screamed, but the officer shoved him into the back of the squad car, slamming the door on his career, his reputation, and his freedom. Vivian watched the cars drive away. She took a deep breath of the cold air. She turned to Captain Merrick. "Captain, I'm sorry for the delay. Do we have enough fuel to get me to my actual meeting?" "We'll top off and be ready in 30 minutes, Miss Clark," the captain smiled. "Excellent. And Eleanor?" "Yes, Miss Clark?" "Open a bottle of the blue label. I believe there's plenty left now that the trash has been taken out." Samuel Worley spent exactly 14 hours in a holding cell at the O'Hare precinct, and every single second was an insult to his existence. The space was a 6x8 concrete box that smelled of stale urine, industrial bleach, and the cold, metallic scent of despair. It was a violent contrast to the cream leather, mahogany trim, and climate-controlled perfection of the Gulfstream GEG 150R he had occupied just hours before. Samuel sat on the edge of a stainless steel bench, his bespoke Italian suit wrinkled and stained, his knees bouncing with a manic, furious energy. He wasn't sorry. He was incensed. In his mind, this was a misunderstanding, a massive, litigious overreaction that he would fix the moment he got his hands on a phone. He was Samuel Worley. He fixed billion-dollar discrepancies. He could certainly fix a misunderstanding with a flight crew. When the heavy steel door finally buzzed and clicked open, Samuel stood up, straightening his tie with as much dignity as he could muster. "Lawyers here," the guard grunted, not even looking him in the eye. Samuel walked out into the processing area, expecting to see the firm's senior counsel, perhaps even a partner. Instead, he saw Dave, a 26-year-old junior associate who looked like he was about to vomit. Dave was clutching a briefcase to his chest, his knuckles white. "Dave!" Samuel barked, his voice raspy from dehydration. "Where is Henderson? Why did they send you?" "Mr. Worley," Dave whispered, looking around nervously, as if being seen with Samuel was a contagion. "We need to go. Now. The car is out back." "Relax, Dave. It's a simple assault charge. We'll plead it down to disorderly, pay a fine, and I'll be in Aspen by tomorrow evening." Samuel held out his hand. "Give me my phone. I need to call the partners and explain that a crazy woman hijacked the flight." "Samuel, don't—" Dave started, his voice trembling. "Give me the phone, Dave." Dave flinched and handed over the sleek black iPhone. Samuel snatched it, marching toward the exit doors. He held the power button. The Apple logo appeared. As they stepped out into the biting Chicago night and into the back of a waiting Uber, the phone booted up. It didn't just turn on, it exploded. The device vibrated so violently in Samuel's hand, it almost slipped from his grip. A continuous, unbroken stream of notifications cascaded down the screen, a digital waterfall of noise. 412 missed calls, 3,000 plus LinkedIn notifications, 99 plus new emails, Twitter mentions, 50,000 plus. "What is this?" Samuel muttered, his brow furrowing. "Is this a glitch?" "It's not a glitch," Dave said, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "It's the end." Samuel opened Twitter. The top trending topic in the United States wasn't the election, and it wasn't the Super Bowl. It was Samuel Worley. His thumb hovered over the first link. It was a video. The footage was vertical, shaky, clearly filmed on a cell phone through the glass window of the Teterboro FBO terminal. But the audio was studio-quality clear. There was Samuel, standing on the tarmac, looming over a woman in a grey hoodie. He saw himself point a finger in her face. He saw himself block her path. "You're just in the way. I grinded for 20 years to stand on these steps. You're just the trash." Samuel felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his spine. The video had been posted by a ground crew member on TikTok. It had 14 million views in 6 hours. The caption read, "Wall Street guy bullies the owner of the jet. Wait for the end. Someone had stitched the video with a second clip, footage filmed by a passenger on a commercial flight taxiing at O'Hare. It showed the pristine Gulf Stream door opening and Samuel being dragged down the stairs in handcuffs, screaming and kicking like a toddler having a tantrum. They filmed it, Samuel whispered, the blood draining from his face. It's everywhere, Samuel, Dave said softly. Bloomberg ran a piece on it 20 minutes ago. They're calling you the Icarus of Aspen. Samuel's fingers shook as he opened his work email. He needed to get ahead of this. He needed to spin it. The inbox refreshed. The most recent email was from the managing partner of Apex Capital. The subject line was 2 words, typed in all caps: termination of contract. He clicked it. The text was brief, cold, and legally bulletproof. Effective immediately, your association with Apex Capital is severed for gross misconduct and irreparable reputational damage. Do not return to the office. Your security clearance has been revoked. Your personal effects will be couriered to your residence. Do not contact any clients. They can't fire me, Samuel shouted, causing the Uber driver to glance nervously in the rearview mirror. I brought in $30 million last year. I haven't even told my side of the story. Dave finally looked at him. His eyes held no sympathy, only a bleak realism. Samuel, your side doesn't matter. You attacked Vivian Clark. Titanium Holdings released a statement an hour ago. They are auditing every deal you've ever touched for fraud. They've effectively blacklisted you from the entire financial sector. You're radioactive. Samuel slumped back against the seat. The city lights blurred outside the window. The merger, the bonus, the corner office, the reputation he had spent 2 decades building. It had all evaporated in the time it took to fly from New Jersey to Chicago. But the universe wasn't finished with him yet. 3 days later, Samuel sat in the living room of his Upper East Side penthouse. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city he used to think he owned. Now, the apartment was filled with silence and empty takeout boxes. He heard the front door open. He sat up, hope flaring in his chest. Melissa, honey, I can explain. It wasn't his wife. It was a process server, a stranger in a cheap windbreaker who handed him a thick envelope. Samuel Worley? The man asked. Samuel nodded dumbly. You've been served. He tore open the envelope. Divorce papers. Melissa wasn't coming back from the Hamptons. She cited irreconcilable differences and public humiliation. She was asking for the house, the remaining liquid assets, and full custody of the dog. She didn't want to be married to a pariah. She had loved the lifestyle, not the man. And without the lifestyle, the man was a liability. An hour later, a courier arrived with a second envelope. This one was heavier. It bore the embossed letterhead of a terrifyingly expensive law firm representing Clark Aviation Group. Vivian Clark didn't just leave it at the arrest. She was dismantling him piece by piece. She was suing him for damages. The list was meticulous and petty in its precision. Cost of fuel diversion to ORD $18,400. Landing fees and hangar storage $200. Interior detailing and cleaning, biological hazard, non-spilled liquid $1,200. Civil suit for assault and emotional distress $2,000. She's suing me for the cleaning bill. Samuel choked out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. Because he had been fired for gross misconduct, his golden parachute severance package was voided. He had zero income. He had leveraged himself to the hilt to live a life he couldn't actually afford, banking on the Aspen merger bonus to pay off his debts. Now, the debts were due, and the creditors were circling like sharks in bloody water. Within 6 months, Samuel Worley filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The bank foreclosed on the penthouse. He stood on the curb and watched as the movers took his Italian leather sofa. The leased Porsche was repossessed in the middle of the night. The lowest moment came on a Tuesday afternoon. Samuel walked into a pawn shop in Queens, wearing a hoodie drawn low over his face, an ironic echo of the woman he had mocked. He placed his Rolex Submariner on the counter. It was the watch he had flashed in the VIP lounge, the symbol of his status. "I need cash," Samuel whispered, "for a lawyer." The pawnbroker looked at the watch, then at Samuel. He offered him a fraction of its value. Samuel took it. He had no choice. He needed to pay a criminal defense attorney to keep him out of prison. Ultimately, he took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct and interference with a flight crew. He avoided jail time, but the judge, who had clearly seen the video, added a specific stipulation to his probation. Samuel Worley was placed on the federal no-fly list. As he walked out of the courthouse, a free man but a ruined one, he looked up at the sky. A jet was streaking overhead, leaving a white contrail against the blue. Samuel Worley, the man who believed he was too important for anything less than a private charter, was now legally banned from stepping foot on an airplane in the United States. He would never see the inside of a cloud again. He was grounded, permanently. 1 year later, the automated sliding doors of the Hertz rental car center at Newark Liberty International Airport opened with a mechanical wheeze, letting in a gust of damp, exhaust-heavy air. It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, the graveyard shift where time seemed to stretch and warp under the relentless hum of flickering fluorescent lights. Behind the Formica counter, Samuel Worley adjusted his collar. It was polyester, stiff and scratching against his neck, a constant, irritating reminder of his new reality. The navy blue uniform was a size too large, hanging loosely off a frame that had lost 20 pounds of gym-honed muscle and gained the slump of a man defeated by life. He looked nothing like the Icarus of Aspen who had trended on Twitter a year ago. The aggressive porcelain veneers were gone, his smile now guarded and dim. The perpetual spray tan had faded into the pale, greyish complexion of someone who slept during the day and worked under artificial lights at night. His Rolex was gone, replaced by a $10 digital watch that beeped loudly every hour, marking away the time of a life he no longer recognized. "Next guest," Samuel called out, his voice flat. He kept his eyes on the computer screen, dreading eye contact. Eye contact led to recognition, and recognition led to cell phone cameras and mockery. He heard the click of high heels on the linoleum floor, sharp, confident, authoritative. It was a sound he used to love, the sound of the boardroom, of deals being closed. Now it just made his stomach turn. A sleek, black, platinum American Express card slapped onto the counter. "Reservation for Clark," a woman's voice said. It was crisp, professional, and impatient. Samuel froze. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. A cold drop of sweat slid down his spine. Clark. It was a common name. It had to be a coincidence. There were thousands of Clarks in New York. He forced himself to type, his hands shaking slightly. He pulled up the file. Client. Clark Aviation Group. VIP status. Diamond Elite. Samuel's breath hitched in his throat. He stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in his widened eyes. He didn't want to look up. He wanted to dissolve into the floor. He wanted to run out the back door and into the rain. "Is there a problem?" the woman asked. Samuel slowly raised his head. Standing before him was a young executive assistant, sharp in a tailored suit, tapping her foot. But Samuel looked past her. Standing near the exit, illuminated by the harsh streetlights outside, was a figure he would never forget. Vivian Clark. She was finishing a call on her cell phone, her posture as regal as a queen. She wasn't wearing the grey hoodie today. She was wrapped in a camel hair trench coat that looked soft enough to sleep in, with a silk scarf tied effortlessly around her neck. She looked untouched by the grime of the airport, untouched by the late hour, and certainly untouched by the man who had tried to destroy her dignity a year ago. Samuel felt a wave of nausea. He was trapped behind the counter, a prisoner in a polyester uniform. "Sir?" the assistant pressed. "The reservation?" "Right, yes. Apologies," Samuel stammered, his voice cracking. He looked back at the screen, desperate to get them out of there as fast as possible. "I see here you have a reservation for a luxury SUV, an Escalade or similar." He looked at the inventory list. It was all red zeros. The lot was empty. Unfortunately, Samuel swallowed hard, the taste of bile rising in his throat. "We are completely sold out of the luxury class tonight. A flight from London diverted here, and they took everything." The assistant scoffed. "We have a reservation. Ms. Clark does not wait." "I understand," Samuel said, his voice trembling. "But the only vehicle I have available, the only thing on the lot, is a Dodge Grand Caravan, a minivan." "A minivan?" the assistant repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. "You expect Vivian Clark to ride in a minivan?" The commotion drew attention. Vivian pocketed her phone and turned. She walked toward the counter, her movements slow and deliberate. Samuel instinctively hunched his shoulders, making himself smaller. He stared intently at the keyboard, praying she wouldn't see his face. "Please don't look. Please don't know me." Vivian arrived at the counter. The scent of her perfume, jasmine and sandalwood, drifted over him. It smelled like money. It smelled like the life he had thrown away. "What seems to be the issue?" Vivian asked. Her voice was calm, possessing that same quiet power that had silenced the cabin of the Gulf Stream. "He says they only have a minivan, Miss Clark," the assistant said, wrinkling her nose. "I'll call the other agencies. We can't—" "It's fine," Vivian interrupted. "But Miss Clark—" "I said it's fine." Vivian turned her gaze to the agent behind the counter. "Key, please." Samuel had no choice. He had to hand it to her. He reached for the heavy plastic fob, his hand shaking visibly. He held it out, refusing to lift his eyes above the level of her scarf. "Here you go," he whispered. "Stall 42. Vivian took the keys. Her fingers brushed his palm, warm human contact against his cold, clammy skin. She didn't pull away. She paused. "Thank you," she began. Then she leaned in slightly, reading the cheap plastic name tag pinned to his chest. Samuel. Samuel squeezed his eyes shut. This was it. The lecture. The mockery. She was going to laugh. She was going to tell his manager that he was a felon. She was going to exact her final pound of flesh. He waited for the blow. But it never came. "Safe travels, Samuel," she said softly. He opened his eyes. Vivian was looking directly at him. There was no anger in her dark eyes. There was no vindictive triumph. There was only a profound, crushing pity. She looked at him, not as an enemy, but as a tragedy. She looked at him the way one looks at a car wreck on the side of the highway, with a somber realization of how quickly things can go wrong. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking a steady rhythm on the floor. Samuel stood frozen. The silence she left behind was louder than any scream. He watched her walk through the automatic doors, the wind catching her coat as she stepped out into the rain to a waiting driver who would take the keys for her. He realized then that she hadn't needed to ruin him. She hadn't needed to get him fired from this job. His punishment wasn't her anger. His punishment was her indifference. To her, he was no longer a threat or a rival, or even a nuisance. He was just the staff, He looked down at his empty hands, then out at the dark, wet parking lot. He was grounded. He would never fly again. "Next guest," Samuel whispered to the empty room, his voice breaking as the reality of the rest of his life settled in. This story serves as a brutal reminder. In the modern world, status is a mirage. You never truly know who you are talking to. Samuel Worley judged a book by its cover, assuming that a hoodie meant poverty and a suit meant power. He failed to realize that the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest, and the quietest person is often the one holding the keys to the kingdom. It costs absolutely nothing to be kind to a stranger. But as Samuel found out, being arrogant can cost you everything. He lost his career, his fortune, and his freedom because he couldn't muster basic human decency for someone he deemed beneath him. The next time you feel the urge to judge someone based on their appearance, remember the grey hoodie. Remember that the person you are mocking might just own the plane you're flying on. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Have you ever witnessed a Samuel in real life? Tell me your story in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.